Okay, on today's video, we're going to talk about presence or interest. Why this one little Google, which is a Google location setting or feature, whatever you want to call it, inside your Google Ads account, could double the money that you're making in your account right now with one teeny tiny little change and understanding what this actual little feature actually does for your account. You know, as we know, inside Google Ads, there's a whole big rat's nest, what it seems like, somebody who's not totally immersed in it every day, which it never used to be that way, and whatever, but whatever, it is what it is. Under your Google campaign, if you go under settings, there are a number of different features there that you can set up to optimize, tell the Google what you want the campaign to do, so on and so forth. Then you also have under locations the geographic area that you would like to target with your campaigns, whether it's local, your city, your state, your country, the world. They used to not have it hidden under the location feature, but now they have hidden where you have to hit more location features to find this prompt where you're asked to select either if you want presence or interest, or presence and interest, or i.e. both, to identify how the location targeting should actually function. So if you want to target all of Houston, it's not so simple. Do you want people that are Googling for Houston? Do you want people who are in Houston? Do you want both? This is the type of stuff this particular setting basically goes over. And I'm going to explain the nuances of it in this video. I'm also going to explain how understanding when and where and for what type of businesses this should be done and for what setting for each of those type of businesses, so you can understand how to apply it to your business itself. After the video is over, I'll tell you about what kind of a difference it makes to optimize your setting here for your company, whether it's the presence or interest, one of the three options that you have, so you get the full bang or benefit out of it. Given that, I felt like I needed to make a video because given that it's now hidden, it started about 2 years ago, I think about 2019, they went from having it right under where you put in your city, states, or countries that you wanted to target. They made you select one. Now you have to click advanced, which I understand why Google did it. People are confused by this, which is i.e. why I'm making this video as well. So they just, what they do for you is they automatically have one selected for you there and you don't see it. And so I'm telling you right now, you can double the money if it's set wrong for your type of business that you have and what normally works for your type of business, and just going in there and selecting the right one, you can leverage what your account is making. With that said, it can actually affect the ROI and profitability. So if you're spending $1 million a year on ads, it can make $2 million when you're done just with this one setting change. Other times, basically it allows you, if you're spending $1 million, now you could spend $2 million, but instead of making $4 million, you're making $8 million. So it's leverage. So depending on your situation. So I'll go through a few different scenarios here so you can understand what kind of scenario applies to you and what you should be using from what I've seen and testing this many, many different times for many, many different types of businesses. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So what is this feature and why is it important to start off with? So I gave a general prelude of what this feature is already. The presence, so there's three main features in the location of your Google Ads account where this feature is found, as I described, that you have the presence and interest, then you have presence and just interest by itself. So it's either this, or this, which is effectively the combination of this and this too. So and presence and interest, or presence or interest. So anyway, with that said, what these individual things basically do is, and how they perform is so if you're let's say your locations, you're targeting the state of Iowa, where I'm originally born from. So like I said with the Houston example, if you put in presence, then if you're not physically in Iowa when searching for your keywords that are in your campaign, the ad will not ever trigger. Pretty simple. If you select just interest, unless I'm searching for stuff in Iowa, like Iowa State Fair, but I'm in Kansas right now, not in Iowa anymore, and I'm going to be able to have my ad show up for that person that's in Canada, because realistically, I know the person is going to be, they're searching for it. We want all the people that would normally come to the Iowa State Fair, because it's big, it's something that people would travel to the state to be able to capitalize on the full amount of people we can get. If people searching for it in Iowa, maybe we know they're going to go anyways. They're not profitable enough. We don't want it. In the situation where I'm not sure, I'll split test it. I'll do presence and then interest in another campaign, which it doesn't hurt if you're not sure if the people inside your city is going to be worth it, or the people outside your city will be worth it searching in, or if you're like in a travel space like I mentioned there. Just as a side note to this, I don't want to overcomplicate it, so I'll move on. Then you have this presence and interest, which combines both of these. You can be, if the person is searching in your area or searching about your area, outside the area. So with that, you obviously want to go the broadest way that you can go here, because that's going to get you the most customers, right? But you don't want to go so broad that it's going to now, your ROI is going to go down below a acceptable benchmark that you should have set up for your account already. If you don't have an ROI benchmark for your account, you need to start tracking it. You need to come up with one. The real pros that make millions a year on their ads understand what their account's supposed to do, and they have a way to track it, respectively. And so when you try out something like I'm going to show you here, you should be able to see if I'm right or not, or what I told you, you interpreted the information right. I know I'm not giving you misinformation here, but you should be able to test it and verify for yourself this works. So your goal is to use presence and interest if you can. Now, with that said, there's different types of businesses that'll normally fall into this presence and interest, that others just presence, others just interest, as I found as a general rule of thumb, or as a whole. I still recommend testing it, and it doesn't hurt, even though I could tell you one, that if you feel strongly about another one, that you could go all the way with presence and interest. Like I said, break out a different campaign, label it presence and interest, and then label the original one, the campaign name, or with your label function, or with the campaign name edit function, just presence or just interest. Or maybe you do 3 campaigns, one with this interest, one with presence and interest. The people who make a lot of money in ads think of it as a process. I've said this on many different videos. This isn't a get-rich-quick scheme running Google ads. All you do, when you get results, you reinvest part of your money into further tests just like this. You figure out what works. Sometimes you make nothing. Sometimes you make double what you would have made. And it breaks out so much additional profit for you that it's worth it, for one. But 2, now you can go on to the next thing. And there's hundreds of individual things like this if you add them all up technically, and you understand all the different features and functions in a Google Ads account and what you can test. Then you roll it into the next thing. And that's how you build up millions of dollars a year producing ad account. But getting past all that. So for a local business, by and large, I'm always 95+% of the time going to do presence and interest. Why is that? There's an article by Fast Company, you can Google this for this, which they got from a research firm itself. Believe it or not, 69% of people that were surveyed in a national survey shop online. I miswrote this. They shop online while they're at work. Sorry, I meant to put work here too as well, to be more clear here. They shop online at work. So maybe this is a clue to you entrepreneurs or business owners out there that are watching, or managers. Your people are... I hate to out you guys that are not running a company here, but they're at work and they're shopping for stuff on company time. That could mean on breaks too, so I don't want to out everybody, but we're talking about more than just breaks here to get 69%. They're office workers, they're shopping online. They basically use their time at work, and I don't also blame them partially, because business hours. If you need to hire a roofing company, and you don't have any days off anytime soon, and your roof's leaking, What are your options? You can call it break. You can call while you're working. While your break, you're out smoking. You have 15 minutes. It's not enough time. During your lunch break, you're eating. Yeah, I'm not going to hurry up and eat. I'm going to call if I can while I'm working. Anyway, besides all that, again, when more than half of the people are shopping online at work or while at work, you cannot negate the fact that half of your customer base basically is going to be not capturable if you don't advertise to people while they're at work. And with that said, a lot of people don't work, obviously, close to where their home is. So you want to capture both to get the full bang for your buck in your market. Of course, if you want, there's only a small little sliver of action that's profitable in your local market. And so if you're only going to tap half of it, well, you're just really handcuffing yourself from being having prosperity in your business that way. So, or at some point, if you're ready to scale up, this is definitely something to look into if you just have presence right now, which is a lot of people what they have actually by default. So you understand what those are. And so with the local business, on a service business, obviously, also if you sell a local product company like a medical product supply company locally, I'm also going to do presence and interest by default. If your ROI is not great, of course, and you're not sure, the business is a little different than what I listed here, go back and test it. But anyway, they're going to search, and it's interesting what people do. They'll search for work, they'll go back home, they will search again, then they'll go back to work because they're not decided yet, and then they'll order when they're back at work. So they go, thankfully Google has cross-device tracking, so if you're on your mobile device, which by the way, they shop at work because they have their mobile phone under their desk. I didn't really realize that when I saw this step, but that explains a lot of it if you can't do it on the company computer because it's monitored. But they have cross-device tracking so that if somebody searches on their mobile device at work and then they go home and finish their purchase, that's going to show up your conversion stats. That's by default now. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do by default. Just about everybody, presence and interest, you're going to make out the best way that way. Now, next, national companies, non-local basically. By default, I'm going to use presence because respectively, we don't want people outside. 99% of my clients are US based. So this is just talking about people in the US market. Of course, outside, that's a different story. But for the most part, if we're selling a product or service nationally, because our dollar is so strong, people outside the country are not profitable because they'll just, let's just say can't afford it as a whole because of the currency issue. And so they don't want to target people outside the US because it's not profitable. Way down your ROI you're getting on your account. So you'll just stick with presence. So if they're not in the USA, knowing pretty much so that we can assume that the person always has money, we're not going to target them. Now, unless you're at a space where you expect one of two other things here, you have a lot of expats or immigrants. So obviously somebody outside the country that's a US citizen that's searching for something inside the US, if you have just presence set up, well, you excluded those people. So respectively, if I could expect 10% or more of my customer base being either expats or immigrants soon to immigrate to the US, then I'm going to do presence and interest anyway. Just as a general rule of thumb, if you want an idea as to whether you should be testing this or not, 10% or more, I'm definitely going to be looking into that. The other third thing about national companies to mention is if you're in the travel space, a lot of times I'm going to be doing, or I should say most of the time I'm going to be doing interest only. Because obviously if you're a travel company, someone's searching for, vacations in Cancun. Well, I don't give a crap about anybody in Cancun searching for in Cancun. That person, or near Cancun even, let's say, because they might be one town over and they're looking, to do a short travel trip. Well, that doesn't include my customer that wants to buy a $5,000 travel package. So obviously that would be the other situation where you don't want presence, and then it's the actual opposite, interest only. Now, so you got a general idea of where things fall for the type of business that you have. I'm actually going to get into the case study section of this video now to explain what kind of a difference does it actually make in your business, switching over and/or just finding the ideal setting, location, setting for this option inside your account so that you can use it to your advantage. So anyway, case studies. This is actually what I've done is actually checked out the amount of top line revenue minus the ad spend. So basically they call that return on account spend in the ad industry space, ad management space, to get some numbers as to figure out what these campaigns were producing for the client before and then after. And generally speaking, we're talking about, first thing I always do, because I know how important it is, I'm going to optimize, because I have this data going in and somebody sets up a new account for the first time, they wing it. When I go from unoptimized to the proper setting, I am able to look at then, because I take I take account for all the results that we get for the client. I store all those videos like this, and I want to just draw from it from other projects. So when we have a similar company, we already know what to use. That's the benefit of using a PPC agency, by the way, because we've tested every which way of every option. We understand this stuff going in, and we're not guessing. And it makes such a big difference, as you can see here, one option versus another. And when you compound that over 100 different options in your account, it doesn't make any sense to just guess on your own. Of course, assuming you have an ethical company who will try and get off their butts and work, which is also hard to find. But if you can find that person that does it right, well, then it's worth every penny. It's worth, paying 10 pennies for every one that you spend. We'll just put it that way. So in terms of what they made before and then switching it over and then what they were making after, and if we're talking about, for most of the benefit coming from the fact that the setting was just switched over, okay, here, and then figuring out how much of a difference that made in general. We'll look at the first example I'm sharing with you is a plumbing company. This is a regional plumbing company, had a bunch of different locations regionally. Before, they just had the presence, switched to presence and interest. It went from 4.51 million in return on an account spend, again, revenue minus ad spend, to 9.27 million in revenue versus ad spend. In this situation, the ROI was pretty much on point, or close, very, very close to where it needed to be starting out. And so more so what we were doing with this is just expanding market. And like I said, well, like the title of the video here, and like I said before, basically if you're making a good, you're making it 8-to-1 or 10-to-1 ROI on your account, and you want to be able to double the action, you want double the volume, you just get the setting, assuming for like a local business, just switching from presence to presence and interest can be the one thing that just doubles it. Because of the thing I said about how many people don't search from home anymore, respectively. This is, we're in the 2020s now. So anyway, that huge return, obviously, from one click. Literally one click on your account. Okay, anyway, going on further, the second example here, so this is a travel company. One of the things that they did out of a conglomeration of different things was they did Alaska ferries. So, if you don't know about it, some people like Northwest, the U.S., from that area also, there's people that travel in, and they'll get on a ferry, like in Washington State, and they'll take a ferry up to Alaska, and it's like a part of a travel package. So anyway, one of the things that Washington State also has is a bunch of ferries that go from island to island and so on and so forth, like in any other place, like Seattle, where there's a bunch of, I don't want to call it an archipelago, but it has a bunch of islands, let's just put it that way. And the cars have to get on the ferries to get from one island to another. So with that, though, when we started out, this company had presence and interest, okay? So this actually gets, like I was talking about before in the Iowa travel example, maybe I have the Iowa Fair. I don't want the people in Iowa because they're not profitable enough to pay to attract, because the cost per acquisition is so high to get them with a PPC ad in the first place, that if they're going to come 30 minutes to my thing, they're not going to spend near what somebody coming from Kansas is going to spend. And I know that through my data analysis and tools that I have. Well, I'm not going to advertise anymore to people in Iowa. They're going to come anyway, and they're not going to spend very much. Whatever. I'll let them click on my organic ad. So in this case, that was a very similar situation as I just described there. They didn't want the local people finding this ad anymore, especially since Google's keyword match types is not. If you type in Alaska ferries and vacations and stuff like that. You could very well get somebody that was searching for originally just a ferry schedule, that kind of thing. So anyway, you get the general idea. With that, huge difference switching over from the interest, presence and interest, to interest only. As I described on a travel company, that's the setting you want. And so they were paying attention. Don't blame them. Not everybody thinks about this stuff. And they don't make it easy to understand with the descriptions when they're reading it real quickly what one is. You're just like, huh? I'll just click one. Not knowing how much of a difference this makes. But now you know. You can't say you don't know now. So anyway, they were making $2.24 million a year in sales before. After, once they just switched this over, switched this to interest, it went to $6.12 million in after account spend profit. So part of this comes from the fact, or I should say, a lot of it comes from the fact, 99% of it comes from the fact that they're saving money on the stuff that's local that can now be applied to, because on a set budget, right? You got $3 million, or you would say you got $30,000 a month in ad spend to spend. Well, $20,000 is being sucked up by this local traffic that's worthless. Well, now you got $20,000 more to spend on what actually works. So now your campaigns can run nonstop, basically, or more. They don't get shut off midday because you're out of budget on your campaigns. Or you could spend a little bit more to have more impression share on your campaigns, which is another way you go about spending the rest of your money on stuff that you know already works. And physically show up a higher percentage of the time for the keywords that you're already bidding on and want to have show up for. And then your sales will go up tremendously because you're reallocating the waste that was there to something that's worthwhile. And that now, because you understand the local stuff isn't worth it, and you're going after the meat of where the 80-20 rule applies to most of these campaigns that are unoptimized starting out. 80% of the value is coming from 20% of the account. You find out where the 20% is, focus on that, take the other 80%, double, triple down on the 20% area of the account that's working, which is what you got here. Then you can literally take sales from 3x from what you had before just by switching this one option, present, to go after people locally and nationally, to people that are just outside the area who want to come to the area, which would be just an interest because they're traveling. They want to take the ferry, and they want to go to Alaska. And they want to take the ferry going to Alaska because they heard that's really nice. So versus somebody, also obviously if somebody wants to take the ferry to Alaska, they're locals. It's like the Iowa example. That person's just because they're so close, that person has less purchasing power, they're worth less, and they're probably just curious more often. If I'm from New York searching about Washington ferries, I'm pretty serious at that point. So it's you got to add all those different individual aspects of what I set up. That's how you're going to get the tripling basically of the profit you're making from the ad spend you have in the account to go from a 2.24 to a 6.12 million a year in sales on the ferry packages. So anyway, beyond this, last example, air medevac. So if you don't know what air medevac is, it's basically if you get injured, you could get a helicopter that will take you from anywhere you're at. You could be in a field out in the desert somewhere, and you got a satellite phone. You could call, and then you can have a helicopter pick you up right where you're at if you have a broken leg or whatever. You get the general gist of this. Now, there's domestic inside the U.S. business, but way more profitable is international, people that are expats, going back to the expats thing here, where people are out there, they're going, on a vacation. An expat is more than just a vacation. They're in a different spot for a few months at a time, or maybe even years. They retire there, whatever. They get injured, they don't want local medical care. They want shipped back to the U.S., and they can't get on a commercial flight because they're all messed up. So they get the flight. It's like $100,000 to get a flight back to the U.S. on a helicopter or whatever. It wouldn't be a helicopter. It would be a helicopter to the airport, then you're going to take a jet if you're going across the ocean in that case. So you get the general idea of what this is. Now going forward, the situation here where you want the presence and interest here, you want the presence and interest. If you're just going with the interest in the situation here, it makes a big difference, primarily because so with this one, basically, the person, so as I mentioned before, anything with like expats and soon-to-be immigrants in that category, you want to go with the presence and interest category with the setup by default, because that's going to get you people who basically they don't want to see local search results in, you know, Thailand, wherever they're at. They want to see stuff in the U.S. most of the time because, you know, that's their home, whatever. Especially for something like this. Even though the company had targeted people outside the U.S. because they knew they wanted to go after international people, right? So they would target all these different countries where they could, the markets that they serve, where they could get somebody out of that country to the U.S. And there's a whole bunch of different countries. Well, somebody screwed up and they only put in presence to the settings. Now, what does that do? That only gets somebody who's in the country to see this service, but it also doesn't get people who are going to search for it in the system. Doesn't, you know, if they're searching and they're trying, you know, basically what I was saying before about the expats and immigrants, usually you want the presence and interest. Well, in this particular situation, it's kind of the reverse. Normally you want presence and interest on a campaign like this. What this particular client obviously knew that the international business is where the big money is at, and wanted and set up their campaign to be targeting all these different countries, the different markets they serve, and each country individually. Well, that all seems good and nice and everything, but what you don't, I guess, realize with that is, if somebody is local and they're searching for this, unless they're an American for sure, they can't afford that service. And because of how keyword matching is done, it's, you know, you're going to get people that are local too if you just go after people in that country. It's because there's such a small pool of people. We're talking about expats or people that are there. Let's just say, you know, we're talking about like 0.001% of the population. You're hoping to go after those people so when they search for air medevac, because maybe they're looking for information, they're doing research, who knows what they're searching for. I mean, there's a bunch of different reasons. But you don't want people from that country to see the ad. You want the buyers, so that there's no slack in what you're doing, basically. We know the person has the money, they actually are an American, now we want them to show up for the ad. But only in that situation. Not if they just search for our services so they're from the country and we don't know they're American for sure. So we had to go the opposite way. That's why I said you have to test this for yourself. These are general things to go with, but there's no absolute. Every single time anybody targeting that has 10% or more of the expats, you want presence and interest. On this particular market, it was a little different, basically. So that's why I had to throw that caveat out there. And so just going to the opposite of what you normally would do here, to the regular presence. And then we would set up a campaign, by the way, for each country. And it would be like, get out of so-and-so, medevac from, you know, Thailand to US. And then the person would search for it, knowing that we want somebody who ultimately wants somebody that goes to Thailand. So we're even further vetting people actually in that process. So anytime where you have 10% more or more of your market basically being the expats or immigrants, then you want to go with the presence and interest category option. Why? Because it gets you people that are outside the area. So basically, the big money in this space definitely is the people who are outside the country, because those are the most costly flights. This company serve domestically and they serve internationally. Now I'll just throw a quick caveat out there. What I would personally have done is all the countries that I could personally serve, which there's a bunch, and it would be a ton of work. But if it were my company and it was my decision in that situation, I would set up a campaign for each individual country, and then I would so that I absolutely can tailor my ad copy just as a side note to this. If a person's in Thailand, Thailand to US medevac, and then I'm going to clean up doing that. That's would be an easy way. If you're in that industry or space or listening to this, and you are, that's an easy way to do it. But assuming that you're trying to, one of the things that people don't know about Google Ads is even if you have they wonder all the time, they ask me, Corey, why aren't your new campaigns beating my old campaigns? It looks like the old guys' campaigns are better. Well, the algorithm and the data behind old campaigns actually have so much value behind them. Even if my campaigns are logistically set up 10 times as good as the old campaign, structurally and just what I know works, the new campaigns will not outperform the old ones for a long time if the old campaigns have been running for like 3, 4, 5 years. It'll take like a year for my campaign to catch up. Now once my new campaigns have run for 5 years, it's going to beat the heck out of the old campaigns, and you have to be able to, basically rip the Band-Aid off sometime. So what I'll do is I'll run the new campaign, but at the same time as the old campaign. Google will test the new campaigns out very, very slowly, see that they get a little bit better results than the old, and then keep ratcheting them up. And eventually the new campaigns will do better than the old, and they'll start pushing the new ones exclusively. So the new campaigns I made are running full time basically after a while, and then the old ones are not. Because they always are trying to run the ads. They're giving the users the best user experience, which would be conversions per impression. And so anyway, all that said, then the people so with the plus interest option, we were able to take the data from the whole old campaigns, switch on of interest thing so that all the international people would be able to instantly find the campaigns and do it. So in taking all the old data that the campaigns had on it to our advantage, like the 3 to 4 years of campaign data already, for the campaigns are already working nationally, where it's actually a little bit more difficult to get working, if you want to say that, just because of the ticket size. But it is, there's still a lot of competition. But generally speaking, then instead of doing the new campaign thing and wanting to be able to get on it right away, start it right away, and immediately take advantage of, be able to get some good numbers, all I did was switch over from the presence in the United States, which they had by default, and switched it to presence and interest. Now we got these expats that are searching for the service outside the U.S. and from basically all over the place. They serve most of the international countries and markets. So respectively, as long as they were searching for U.S., medevac company in U.S., because if you're wondering how it works, if you're outside the area and you type in medevac company U.S., that's when your ad will show up, as opposed to if you type in medevac company and you're in Thailand and it's just set up under presence, it won't show up. But if it's medevac company Thailand, then it will show up for somebody if your targeting is set up as U.S. If your targeting is set up as Thailand and the person's in Thailand and they search for medevac company, then yes, it would still trigger. The immediate next thing to do once you know that something like that works is to go and actually, like I said, set up an individual campaign for each country so that you can each country say, Thailand to U.S. medevac and Belize to Thailand or Belize to U.S. medevac. You're going to get a lot lower cost per sale that way, a lot higher profit margin doing it that way, instead of getting it up as presence in each one. Or you could do presence and interest, but you do presence and interest in each one on the new campaigns. I'd say that's by default probably your better option, and then do presence and interest on all the national campaigns. So basically anybody who doesn't get covered by this new campaign, you'll start to get people with higher click-through rates on these new campaigns that you set up. Anyway, that's a whole side thing. If you're wondering what the results were switching over from the presence to presence and interest to get the expats that are searching for the services, went from 1.19 million a year in sales off of the Google Ads program that they had to 4.38 million. And if you definitely would have taken it further and set up campaigns and actually went and did presence campaigns and started a new, for each country, and then run those side by side with the presence and interest campaign that has all the old, all the 3 years of history behind it, it would immediately get more conversions. And then eventually, once this is eventually not running anymore because the algorithm figures out the original campaign is just being blown away by the old campaigns, I'd switch the new campaigns for each country to presence and interest too would be my immediate thing I would test in once it's been running for a year or more. Like I said, it could take for something that's 3 years old, comparing it to a year-old campaign or a new campaign, it might take a year before the new campaign beats the which is now 4 years old at the time that the new campaign is 1 year old. So you get the general idea. It's a huge, huge gain with this. Now, obviously, it's 4 times the money. Part of it is you're opening up the international market. But I just wanted to throw this scenario out there as well because there's different ways to open up to the international market, to the expats. I want you to understand how I would personally go through the motions of doing it. And that is taking advantage of, instead of doing the individual country campaigns first, you're going to take the old campaign, switch it to presence and interest. If it's not, set up new campaigns, let those run, and then have those at presence and interest as well once those new campaigns are up and going. So you understand a little bit more behind the mechanics of doing this. If you were going to do something that targets people outside the country, or have some sort of like immigration visa program or whatever, when somebody's going to be searching for it outside the country, you're definitely going to take the advantage of the old campaigns, get what you can out of them, start working on the country by country campaigns that you have, and then eventually replace the original campaign, which you just switched over from presence to presence and interest, if you haven't already, in that type of situation where you know what you want somebody from the U.S. that's searching, but maybe they're back in their home country for a little while and they want to contact you beforehand or whatever, and you don't ultimately, for sure, with that in that immigration situation, you don't want too many of the locals. So the presence and interest on the U.S. campaign probably will be efficient. In that immigration situation, or immigration, business, a presence-only campaign may not work. If you go ahead and put, like Mexico to U.S. Immigration Services firm, that may not be enough in that situation, by the way. The presence and interest is probably the one I'm going to stick with, and it's going to be with the U.S.-based targeting option there in that immigration situation, by the way. Just as a side note, anyway, that's the whole thing. So you understand what kind of a difference this setting, the small little, what seems like a benign setting can do for your business if you're in the right situation. If you like this video, I have a ton of other videos like it on this channel, money-making PPC strategies, different things you could do. You should check those out if you haven't seen those already or any of them. Apart from that, I have a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog, which has step-by-step information on how to build campaigns like I described here, the way that I do it for our clients, in which we have to guarantee the results. You could do it for yourself. If you have any questions or comments, leave me a comment down below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, and I appreciate you stopping by. Hope that this information can help you and get more results on your campaigns.